the story of why do we need to bother with a DMMA? And if you guys wouldn't mind just connecting to Menti, I'd like to get your feedback in certain questions. These have been certain things that have challenged me. So if you wouldn't mind joining using the QR code or the code 82524272, and if you join on menti.com. And when you get there, won't you mind just clicking thumbs up so I can see how many people are on? There are a few coming. Thank you very much. That's great. Okay. All right. So this is where I'd like to start. And this one is a comment from one of the CEOs. So at one stage, I was about to join or communicate with one of the companies I wanted to work with, and I mentioned what I wasn't aware of was some form of swear word as far as that CEO was concerned. And his comment was something like this. I'm wondering if you can see it, but the CEO once told me that he's had enough of maturity assessments. They are a waste of time. And he felt that they were just there for the vendors to make money. So they were there to generate revenue. And he said, every single time we do this, we get the lowest scores possible, then we have to pay them money to come and fix all our problems. And he felt, all you guys are, what you're doing is you're actually just finding a way to tell us how bad we are so that we pay you money and you can then justify a project. Okay, so it was certainly a challenge to me. It was the first time I had heard this, and I was then trying to, and I wanted to ask you people and what you felt in terms of how would you justify something like this, or do you believe that that CEO is right? So I'm hoping that the Menti is available. Are you available? Is everything working? Are you seeing the screen, Paul? Are you logged on to Menti? Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Is it? Can someone just enter something in there? Ah, fantastic. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So how do you feel about this? Is there some real benefit? Okay, don't have experience, that's fine. Do you have experience of every single time, or have you got experience of assessments where people come in and they go through all these assessments that can take 3 or 4 weeks? They do all these presentations, and what is the typical outcome of these presentations? They tend to be, you're doing really bad here, or whatever it is, and now you must employ us to help you fix it. Is that something that you've experienced? Okay, so there's someone saying that they disagree. They feel that there is experience, and just to help me understand there, when you disagree, yes, it can be done in-house. Do the businesses, can you show me what sort of benefits the organization has got from these engagements? Definite benefits. One size does not solve all, so maturity helps to ID the correct approach and the level of intervention. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so we highlight areas of improvement. It's all about change management. Can someone explain who added the change management? What do you mean by it's all about change management? Is it changing the way that the executive thinks about it? Is it changing the way that we as data management professionals present these maturity assessments? So I wouldn't know where to start if I didn't do these. I would be able to build a strategy. I saw the value firsthand in a recent project where business owner used it to show progress of the project and sponsors. Okay. Had a similar pushback from my business. Take the approach of quantifying the benefits in terms of efficiency and effectiveness of moving up to the level. And that brings about a really nice discussion. This one is to say, some people feel that after a level 3, they've done enough. And the more that we ask them to do, to go to level 4, 5, it's just costing lots of money and they're not even too sure what the benefits come back. So if you were to explain to the CEO what benefits you get out of going up 3, 4, and 5, how would you see the value of that? Okay. All right, great. So in general, what we are saying that we do believe there is change management, and so we all generally disagree that or agree that the CEO suppose he's had a bad experience and we need to get over it. But the next step that he's going to ask is, okay, if you're adamant that there's benefit to my business, then please help me quantify and add to the business case what is going to bring him value? What about the DMMA is going to introduce this value? Does that make sense in terms of what the question I'm asking? So if you were then to say, well, okay, these are the benefits you get. This is the business case. How would you put those benefits down and then almost quantify them in a way of the value that they get to the organization?
Howard, I don't know if the mentee has gone, or am I looking at the wrong thing?
It's in benchmarking.
Cool.
Okay, benchmarking. So nice idea. The benchmarking, what value does a business get in terms of benchmarking? And maybe let me ask you, let's say the score comes out at a 0.7. Is there any value in showing us that we many levels or behind the industry or the sector that we're in? Do we believe that they are? Do you believe in a way that they are unaware of it? A lot of times when I get the CEO comes and asks us, they tend to feel that something's wrong. Paul, I don't know about you, but you've just put in a proposal to do a DMMA for a customer. What was the reason? Why did they initiate it? Did they feel that they've got problems? Do they feel we've got disagreements? What's the reason? I like that comment on meeting regulatory requirements. So a lot of the times the regulatory requirements almost define a standard, and we could almost say before a level 3, and when you achieve a level 3, then you're meeting the regulatory requirements. So the nice thing about regulation requirements is it's an all or nothing. You're either meeting the requirements or you're not meeting the requirements. So the regulatory requirements almost in a way forces you to get there.
So Howard, a couple of things were brought up in that request. One is regulatory, being the type of business they are. Second one is change of teams or restructuring. They don't know where, if the capabilities are set up correctly, where the lack is, where the need is, which is a good one. And also, because they don't have much control over the source data, because they're consuming a lot of data, they are battling with quality issues and all of that integration. So they really need to this input into defining the way forward strategy.
Okay, Fantastic. So that's really great. And I think you were dealing with the CIO there, Paul. And so they have this sneaky feeling that they got some challenges, and they want something almost to an extent an independent person to give them a view of where their challenges are and to help them structure it. Would it not be comfortable, as someone said in the previous screen, why don't they just do it themselves? Was that question asked, Paul? Did you get an understanding of why?
Yeah, I didn't actually. It's a good question. I know that they've been on the track for the last few years in terms of measurement. So they want to see how they're progressing. So that was the promise, I guess, 2-3 years ago,
Okay.
to show the change. But that's where as much as I know from that perspective. It's a good question, though.
Okay. Yeah, and I suppose maybe what we know is when we want to make data governance sustainable, certainly one of the sustainable aspects would be getting the DMMA or the maturity assessment to be able to be performed not just by the data governance team, but by the business stewards or the lead business stewards within each department, right? So they should almost be able to assess themselves as to where they are in this journey of becoming compliant, whether they're there in terms of improving their implementation capabilities. They should be able to handle this. Okay. So there was an interesting question there in terms of so we're not sure about the DMMA specifically, but efficiency, effectiveness, legislation, and risk management are generic facets or factors to consider for motivation. Okay, that's a really nice one. And what I would like to suggest to you is that that effectiveness and efficiencies really tend to kick in once you've got to a level 3, and where you have the procedures being defined and used commonly across the organization. Yes, you are going to experience the fact, or in terms of the lack of efficiency or efficiency prior to level 3, because people are doing them differently, and we're having all the different approaches to what's happening. So you're not going to be as efficient as if everybody has a common behavior. Do they create a data model in the same way? Do they do a maturity in assessment in the same way? Do they do data strategy? And if possible, that it's not dependent on the skills of the individual, but there's a well-defined knowledge management or process to create it, and it's used consistently across the organization. So really, one of the challenges I'm finding that I can only demonstrate efficiencies that they kick in once we get to this level 3 of a DMMA. And I'm hoping that everyone knows about those 5 levels of the DMMA. I like to start off at a level 0, meaning I'm completely unaware of what you're talking about. I've never done a data value realization use case. I've never created it. I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm unaware of it. So it's not to say that it's not happening in all of the areas of business, but it is to say that I'm personally unaware of it. I don't know your policies on data handling ethics. Okay, you've never updated me. You've never made me aware of those conditions. Okay, so level 0 is unaware. Level 1 is what we call ad hoc, and we then saying that the success of the process or the actual deliverable is dependent on the capability of the individuals. And what's important to that is to say, even though you get a level 1, doesn't mean that it's not happening or you're not successful. It just means that the only way you are successful is if you have a really skilled data professional that's there. Okay. Level 2 is that there are minimum amount of processes that have been defined, but they are not standardized and used across the organization. Level 3 is we've got the processes standardized, we operationalized, we've trained the people, and they're all responding appropriately, okay, and using it. Then we get to 4 and 5, and that's where we talk about efficiency and effectiveness, and that's where we start to ensure that these processes and deliverables are managed and controlled. They have the appropriate review gates, they're being checked for quality, they've got a scorecard, and level 5 means that you've actually set improvement KPIs. So you want to, by the next quarter, by the next year, you want to be able to improve efficiency and effectiveness by a certain amount. And then you'll then start moving into the transformation. So for the person that mentioned that efficiency and effectiveness, does that sort of answer that statement that you've got? Okay, I didn't want to put that person on the spot. Okay, then the other one was DMMA offers a structured, achievable approach to maturing and being compliant and deriving value. Okay, so yes, that's what it's about. It's about constantly assessing where you are, having almost a data-driven measurement system of where you're sitting, and then enabling you to continue to go and progress further and further. Okay. All right. Are there any questions before we now go into some of the details? Would anyone like to ask a further question or a comment on that? Okay. Paul, any comments from your side? Oh, Ross, yes.
Hey, Art.
You, how are you doing?
All right, and you, man? What's in bed
Yeah,
now?
good.
Good. So what I was thinking of was in terms of convincing the CEO, you know, of the value of the approach. Would it not be a useful case to identify a project that's in the pipeline or in inception, kind of do an assessment, just speak to the project team? Obviously, it needs to be a fairly high-profile project, or, I mean, it might not have to be. I was just thinking out loud there. But if he's once selected a project that was going to be implemented, and you basically check it out with the team, and then say, what are you proposing here, here, and then provide the guidance in terms of trying to make this, and a standard or adopting standards with respect to, the modeling, putting in things like data quality, security, stuff like that. And then, showing a map, using an existing project, which might not, probably wouldn't, have covered all that ground. And then maybe finding a champion, to walk that journey and provide guidance while they go through something like that, as a way to convince, the people internally at the company, not only the CEO, or CIO, because I mean, people are also resistant to things that just get forced down upon them. So that's I would, I mean, it would be a slightly more lengthy engagement, and there's probably a lot of stuff you give away for free at the beginning, but I think once you've convinced the guy and he's walked that walk with you, they should be starting to see the benefit.
Right. And Ross, it's I like what you're saying. Unfortunately, sometimes when you do this as is assessment or where my current state is, maybe just focusing on one project could give you quite a biased view. And then what happens is that people say, yeah, but that's not the way we do it, or we do that. And then you have a sort of one-sided image of what's happening. It's almost the view of that project. So what I do find one of the key areas of these DMMAs is to avoid what we refer to as groupthink or group persuasion that we're all doing it consistently, we're all working appropriately. So a lot of the times the DMMA is trying to say, well, you as an organization across all your business departments, do you have a standardized way of implementing things? Now, what I like about what you're saying is if once we've done the review and we show them where their challenges are and things like that, would then be to say, well, how could we implement some, they call it targeted programs. That's what the thing in the DM box is once you've got the recommendations, present a targeted or provide a roadmap, prioritize attention. So you could say, here's a project that could benefit from it, and let's try to help and help them with some of the deliverables and improve some of the deliverables on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I like to go wide. And what I want to share with you here is an example of the way most of us do a DMMA. Most people have seen these results that look like this. I'm hoping that most of you would agree with that, where we have this view, and across the different domains, we would sort of, or capabilities, we would aggregate the score. And I really like the radar diagram to show them where they're doing well, and then also to, in a way, I'm hoping you can see, I call it DTT, which is distance to target. And what that distance to target is saying is, I'm currently at a 1 for metadata. I need a 3, and I've got two jumps to take to get to that level 3. So this tends to be a lot of the times the output of a DMMA. For several years, this is what I presented, and then we broke it down by capability. This is across the different departments. We then broke it down by sort of different knowledge areas, and we also bring in what I call a response variance as to how different the responses are. We then break it down into a business unit. We can break it to a phase, a DMBOK phase: planning, control, development, and operations. And in some cases as well, we could even go to an individual and say, well, this is how an individual responded. Okay, so that's the sort of way in which one presents these results back. And you can also do a situation where you go by each knowledge area and say, okay, that's great. Now, what I need to look at is how are we doing in data quality? And then give them some examples of the different areas. Okay, and I'll show you a presentation a little bit later on. But any of those people that have done it, Paul, I know you've done it before. I don't know anybody else, but typically this is the way you would present the results back to the executive board afterwards. Is any feedback? Is that sort of what you've done up until now?
Yes, that's exactly the format. Yeah, and it's and as you say, a picture speaks 1,000 words, so it's really impactful when they see. And if you've seen the other ones that I've done, where you overlay at the various times as well, you could bring the progress as well, which is very nice.
So the progress is really good. So what's your progression over the last 2-3 years? And I know that what we've done in the past is also look at certain risk areas to say, here is the different level of risk. There's no risk here, low risk on these ones. There's medium risk here. So if I click on this one, these are the deliverables where we have medium risk. And then these are the deliverables where we have high risk. There's data handling ethics. So yes, we've got a hand up. Let me just check whose hand is up. JG. Oh, how are you doing, JG? What's up?
Hey, Howard. Always good, always good. Howard, just I think that, and you might cover it in a moment, but there's this construct of the radio chart having that aspirational goal of a 3 for defined. But
Yes.
sometimes it's really useful to look at when a client sets their own aspirational target per domain, because then immediately it starts to give you a sense in terms of what that business deems important versus kind of gives the relative ranking
Yes,
to
now you
each
can
of
see
the
here.
domains.
You can see here, JG, is I do that here. For example, this is a department called internal audit, and so the blue one's there, and the red one is the distance to target. So so we've got 0.6 on the current review, and they are saying you need to be at a level 3, and so you've got a 2.94 to go to get that compliance level. Now, what you'll see, for example, in this area, you can see they've got a negative thing. So they're saying they're okay. As far as they're concerned, from a data management organization level, they're fine.
Yeah, I think it's just that construct that this data management process can seem to be quite theoretical. And when you then set your targets for each of the domains according to what you think is important to your business, then that really brings it. It makes it relatable for the business. And I just thought the way that that's done has been powerful. Thanks, Howard.
Right. Okay, so I do agree with you when you put that radar diagram on these as well, then you get by business unit. If you can almost do a trellis visualization against all business units, you start to see what they have suggested. Okay. Great. So now what I wanted to ask you is to say, and I like Paul's comment. It speaks 1,000 words. It shows everybody what's wrong. But let's put ourselves in the shoes of a CEO. Do you think it speaks 1,000 words to the CEO? Does the CEO really say, well, fine. I mean, I can understand the scale, but so what? Yes, Ross. Sorry, Ross.
Sorry, I was mute there.
Okay.
So the only thing that really speaks to me is, there are these gaps, but they're all in numbers. And the CEO is reviewing that. And how's he going to translate that into, well, what does that mean on that particular axis? Where am I short? Where am I doing well?
Yeah. Look, and I suppose what we do a lot of times is to say, here is my scale, level 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so at a scale point of view, anything when we say that level 0 is unaware and level 1 is ad hoc, so basically this diagram is telling you that most of the times you are ad hoc, right? Everything's dependent on skilled individuals. There we can see the summary of current maturity. You typically, that's where you mostly are. Okay. And I like what you've just pointed out here, Ross. There's a whole lot of numbers and there's a whole lot of elements that I started to think and question as to, well, does this really answer the business and tell them what's happening and what's going on? And why is it happening?
Yeah, that's the feeling I get is, as someone who not necessarily as detailed or fair.
Yeah. And I think what we're trying to do in a way is to reduce having to teach the CEO and the execs and everything all about data management before they can understand what's happening. Right? That's the sort of goal that I try to do, is when we communicate with them, it's about benefits, it's about value, it's about where we got risks and things like that. They tend to respond better than I've got DG, DQ, metadata, and sometimes they're not even too sure what those things mean. So what is the value of metadata to me? That's a challenge. Why should I improve on metadata? Is it not just a whole lot of other work that you're asking me to do and we get nothing out of? Okay, so this is sort of what I'd like to focus on today. We are going to go through it this whole of this month to actually talk about the different issues. So that's, Rita, that's a good observation. How do you make it real for them? Storytelling to convey examples. Okay, so I'm glad you asked that question, because that's what I really believe this whole month of, and all the month of these webinars, plus sort of the month that I spent in December, I spent lots of time. I promised Veronica it was going to be done in 2 or 3 days. It was 3 weeks later, and I was still battling to describe the story that I wanted to tell. What are the important messages that you need to give to the business? All right. Paul, I'm wondering if this relates to, you can, I mean, interpret this in terms from your next engagement. Do you believe you need to go further than just the radar diagram? Is that sufficient to end, or do you believe you need to take it that level further?
Howard, I think you've definitely sparked it. That while you were talking, I was thinking, okay, so what's it to the CEO? And in my head, I'm saying, all right, what's missing from that radar diagram is the context of the question he's asking, or she is asking.
Yeah, right.
And then how do I position the radar to answer that? So yeah, that's would be my next. I'm happy I'm here.
Yeah, great. Okay, so this is what I felt was important. I really thank you, Rita, for bringing it out, because I was wondering how to convey almost the next slide. And I know you may not be able to see it, so what I should do is just use a bit of Power BI or PowerPoint to focus on some of the elements. And this, to me, that was almost on the presentation, is why should we bother? So the first thing I had to work out is, well, what am I trying to achieve with the DMMA, constantly producing it, and constantly, what's the message that we're trying to share? And the thing that struck me about this whole assurance, and I know we used it with a regulatory project, and Paul did this assessment repeatedly, almost every phase that we did, Paul redid it. And the message we were trying to say is, can you see the improvement that we're making? Can you see the progress that we're making in every single one of these areas? We're improving our policies, we're improving our procedures, we're improving the deliverables. So to me, what it was doing was that actually it was coming back to the scenario where we were trying to give the business assurance that we can manage their data. We're capable of supporting their decision making. That's the value, that's the message that we go back to the CEO. And so our purpose is creating the shared alignment, a shared understanding. We've got alignment of people, process, tools, technologies. We're doing things consistently across the organization. Within the organization structure, we want to increase collaboration and interaction. Leaders and citizens, we want to all know that we're doing things in a standardized way, common understanding, common behavior, to enable the decision making and achieve a position of relative advantage. What is interesting in terms of some of the benchmarks, I was happy that someone put benchmarks in the first slide, and what you'll see a lot of the times is that the typical benchmarking for maturity assessment across lots of the organizations, they're not many of them have reached that level 3. A lot of people believe they are at a level 3, but not many of them have reached that level 3. And so I'm sort of running out of screen space here, so I'm not able to view the team scenario. But can you see, Aretha, can you see the type of story that you're trying to tell? And then I sort of go into this the answer that I need to, the questions that I need to answer to the business is, are we capable of doing data management? And then how capable are we? So what's our level of capability? And then the first question is, are we capable? Now, I'm sure you can interpret the fact that if we're sitting at a level 0, all right, we're not capable. We need to admit to ourselves that we are incapable of delivering on that capability. Let's call it big data. Let's call it data handling ethics. The next question will be, well, what's the risk of us not being capable? What does this impact us? How does this affect our ability to deliver? Okay, so here are the core answers that I need to give to my organization. Are we capable of managing the data from a change point of view, from a cultural point of view, and from a technical feasibility point of view? Can we really do a data quality assessment? Can we really monitor and measure our data quality of our systems and the reports that we're delivering? So can we build data products that support decision making? Can we provide trustworthy data? Can we provide reliable insights? And these tend to be the main questions that you want to go back to business with and provide those answers. Are there any comments or questions on what I believe the DMMA, the message that the DMMA should be transmitting back to the executive level? Simple. Guys, are we capable of managing your data to give you good business decisions? And then how capable are we? Yes, Crystalline.
Hey, Howard, hope you're doing well. Quick question from my side. It maybe sounds a bit stupid or insignificant, but just want to understand, does the DMA contribute to any way or any manner in helping to try and facilitate a data-driven environment?
It's a great question. I was actually training today in Saudi on the NDMO regulation, and all over the NDMO regulation, they actually talk about being data-driven. And one of my comments to them was to say, unfortunately, data-driven almost has a different scale. They are connected, and as we improve our maturity and people see that we doing our engineering properly, and Chors was actually commenting on that at the engineering. If business have confidence that we engineering properly, consistently, then they do almost get a confident feeling that we're doing things correctly. But let's talk a little bit about being data driven. I have a scale that I like to measure my business. So the first area that we focus on is, are we disabled? Are we data disabled? We want to get to data driven, but where do we find ourselves currently? Data disabled, meaning that people do not trust the reports and do not trust the dashboard and do not trust the data that you're presenting. It's nice you've got it there, but they don't believe that that's the real answer. And that's where we're at. We then go to, and so what they'll do is they'll get some data from you, and they don't believe that's actually what's happening on the ground or in the real world. So then they will start to adjust the data to tell the story that they want to do. So it's actually people telling stories, not data telling stories, right? And so we go from this disabled to enabled, meaning that they're starting to see some value of the reports, they're starting to trust it. Then when it gets to led, they're actually saying, shucks, some of those forecasts that Don and them are producing about where things are going, we actually believe that, and we're going to start changing our business, but we're going to do it under discussion. And then data driven, in theory, what data driven is saying is that if data tells you to go that way, you typically go that way and you work it out on the way. So that's the sort of continuum that I have in terms of explaining data driven. Does the DMMA relate to that? Not really. It tends to be more cultural. the levels of trust that you've got. Certainly DMMA contributes to that by saying, look, we are doing a good job and we are capable of managing your data and giving you the answers you need. I'm hoping I answered your question, Crystalline.
Thanks, you have.
Okay. And what we've been saying, and right, last year we spent a lot of time saying, getting to data driven. There are not many companies that are completely data driven, and especially at a high level business strategy level, where the data would tell them where to go and they would follow the data. I don't see many people there. It's a nice idea. It's great to know that. And I do believe that business should help data should help transform the business when you get to the right level and give them insights. But whether we can be truly data driven, not convinced in terms of from a business strategy, and whether executives are able to take that step where if the business is this way, then we're going. Okay. Yes, Nisha, there's all sorts of challenges to becoming data-driven. Implementing metadata, certainly that, understanding more of the context, collecting data from all over the market. So if the data says, you should go and invest in here, or as Don knows, that we are telling them from a monetary policy point of view to reduce the basis points, do we believe that they're just going to reduce them? I know, spending time with Don on the train for many days, they said they're not there, and just their ability to respond to exactly what the forecasts are showing on data, I think they're a long way from being there. Don, I wonder if you could just quickly share a little bit there. You certainly shared a lot with me. I think he's dropped off. Okay. All right. Christine, I hope that's given you a good answer. And then just coming back to this slideshow or this scenario, how do people feel about, do you feel that that's a good summary, a good objective vision for DMMA, Data Management Maturity Assessment? Any challenges? Anyone, JG?
Yeah, Howard, I would like to challenge that, because I think I'd like to offer an idea of the DMMA is a enabler to the team to create a create a discussion with the management team in terms of what they're missing and what they need. So I think that to pitch, you need to pitch the DMMA to the executive and say, this is what we need. And I like this kind of question tree hierarchy that you've got in terms of why should we bother, which is another way of saying, why should you release cash? But I think there's this mezzanine layer that happens when it comes to convincing the management or the executive are looking to their team to say, if I do invest in the DMMA process, will you switch it on for me? Will you enable it? Like, who is their go-to people? So I think there's the DMMA pitch is to an executive to release the funding as well as to create the expectation and alignment of the team. But they are going to want to know there's a team that will switch this on for them and kind of grow that proficiency in the business. So how do you reconcile that a DMMA quantifies what's going to be delivered to the executive, powerful, but actually it gives a roadmap of where to focus to the actual deployment team. And we talk about DMMA executive, but what about DMMA team, data team? Does that make sense, Howard? Question?
Yeah, it does make sense. And maybe what I'd like to show you here, if you look at the screen, is remember these two questions, and I'm trying to almost bring the justification or the vision of the DMMA into a couple of sentences and a couple of questions. And what I'm suggesting is that, first of all, the objective of or the aim of the DMMA is to assure the stakeholders that we are capable of delivering data products and managing the data.
Nice, agree, yeah.
Let's maybe,
Yeah.
okay, great. Then it's a case of saying, well, the purpose is to get a shared understanding of where we are with all our people, process, and tools with respect to data management. So are we all in agreement that this is the level that we're at? And then if we agree with that where we're at, then, are we capable at the current level? Are we capable of managing your data? What is the technical feasibility about? Are we able to build the data products that are going to support the decision making? Have we got the right culture? Are we capable of making the changes to get to where we need to be? And then the next question is, yes, okay, so let's say, well, we're not really capable now. So it's, well, how capable are we and what do we need to do to fix our capabilities so that we can get our data into the shape that it's required to make the decisions? Is that's sort of what I'm trying to say, JG?
Nice. So Howard, it's that construct of getting the stakeholders to buy into that. This is a capability build where this is going to result in in business capability, and that is that's actually your institutional memory that sits right there, and illustrate a way to quantify the value of that. I think that's like, I love the way you've said is like, why should we bother? And are we capable of supporting the business decisions? And can we then build capability? And can you, not consultants, but can your team build capability on an ongoing basis in against a roadmap that is manageable, achievable, and in line with the business objectives? So I really like that construct of building capability in a DMMA, Howard.
Right. So that's great. And what we could be saying here is, I don't really need to talk to you about metadata capability or data quality capability or these others. Is as a whole, do we have the capability to help you with your decision making? And then what they want to know is that when we assess how capable we are we being transparent with ourselves in terms of how capable we are? Are we being truly honest at the level of our capability?
That's really good.
And
really
then
good, yeah.
Getting corresponding feedbacks from the outside in terms of the external perspective. And that's where I think I was sharing with Paul or just now when we're saying, I think it was with Ross, be careful of being almost initially when you build your first DMMA, be careful of limiting the scope so much that you've got just one perspective of the scenario. And JG, I think you saw some of the challenges with our Friday DMMA feedback to the execs, where it was a lot of groupthink, and you got not a lot of differentiation. And the execs were saying, but we feel that domain is not so good as you're pointing out, and this one is better. But unfortunately, we had a common voice or a single voice across all of them, and it watered down that impact of that assessment.
Yeah, and just a maturity assessment can be at different. The outcome depends on the maturity of the business, and so that groupthink is sometimes necessary to just get across that line. So I really like what you're suggesting here, Howard, is that it's a capability build. It's an internal capability build, and I think that that institutional memory is really hard. It's linked to the capability of the folk.
Right.
Thanks, Howard. This is a really powerful question tree. Thank you.
Okay, so what I wanted to say is, that's fantastic. You've stated all of this, but how do we go about answering how do we go about providing those core answers? And what I've come up with is to say, well, to create those answers, these are the core questions. And I always like this in terms of, I work this in terms of with data science and things like that, and business performance measurement. Basically, what you do when you build a dashboard is to say, every period, if this is the way we're measuring our business, what you should be saying, what happened in this period? So and it's quite simple. Did I improve? Did I go backwards? or did I stay the same? Okay. And then the next question is, well, why are we operating? Why is this happening to us? Are we improving but too slowly? Or are we going backwards, and why did we go backwards? We need to be able to answer that. Why is it happening? Then the question is going to be, that's great. Now, what should we do? What can we do to resolve this issue? And then it would be, well, when are we going to be ready? If we're saying that our capability is low down, well, please tell me when we're going to be ready, what the risks are, and where my required improvements are, so that I can take action and I can start dealing with it. And then the last thing that I always like to do is just to cover myself in terms of that I haven't missed something is, what is it that we're not aware of? And I like to use almost customer surveys to be able to go through this and say, well, is there something we're missing? Is there something that we haven't addressed in this DMMA and we're not seeing? Okay, so that's my sort of breakdown of how to tell a story, how to do the storytelling. And I'd love to ask Rita, is if I can give you visualizations and presentations and answer all these questions, do you believe that's appropriate level of telling the story and answering the questions?
I personally like to really make it real for them and tell them an anecdote or something that illustrates how things works when it's right and how it goes pear-shaped when it's wrong. And
Right.
although I'm sitting here with my knowledge management hat on, I may share many moons ago when I was working close to a data warehousing team, I well remember a colleague coming past me a bit flustered and saying to somebody, and I think it was about wills, I can't recall exactly what the context was, I'm literally talking about 20 years ago. And she said, must I include the dead people? English was not her first language. She was from Europe somewhere. But my point is that she didn't understand the broader context of what she was busy with. And
Right.
I think this is where I always try to make a real story about how things can be interpreted wrongly, how things can be improved with an anecdote from
Right.
grassroots level, as opposed to this, because this is still very conceptual to me. And I'm not sure if people who are not trained in this language and all of that really grasps it. At the moment, I'm talking about metadata in context of a knowledge portal to a client. And I'm struggling to convey the value of standardizing the metadata for retrieval purposes and all of that. So in my meeting next week, I'm actually going to literally put wireframes on the screen and say, see, if this is standardized, then this will be, will be able to filter this. But if there's no standardization on document type in this case, then you won't be able to pull out all the XYZ document types.
Yes, and what we do, Rita, is when I do a DMMA, and Paul knows this and he's seen this, I love to get feedback from the person answering as to what they feel the challenges they are facing. And then I use a word cloud in what's happened to actually show them what their people are saying about why they believe it's at the position they are. But I still like to keep the story flowing. You're right,
Yes.
you need to give the examples, but I want to keep the story and make sure I'm answering what the potential questions are.
Agreed. I like the word cloud idea as well, because it's I nearly want to say real quotes, in the sense of real story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I like about that situation is that you've anonymized it. No one really sees it. Some of the sentences are broken up. And then you got this heavy punching things of frustration coming out. As we're not paying attention to the standards. We don't have anything in this area. And other people saying we're doing fantastic. Thank you very much. So it's these things and as the words get more and more impetus, so they become bolder on that word cloud, and you start seeing almost an image coming out or a message coming out that the execs can get, but there's no one is compromised by the fact that they added those comments and they're not happy, or they're happy, or they feel everything's okay. So it gets the emotions into the DMMA.
Indeed.
And what you will see here from a knowledge management point of view, Rita, what I like to do is to say, depending on where you're at, and I always like to say between a level 0 and 3, it's really a lot of it's about change management, and 3 and above is about knowledge management. So if you're battling that people are unaware, well, as quickly as possible, we should start with our communication. Start making people aware. Start helping them understand the awareness and the desire. We've got to get to that desire. And then at the next level, we're saying now it becomes a skill level where we may not, we depended on certain skilled individuals to actually get this ball across the try line. And then at a higher level between 2 and 3, it's all about being consistent. Exactly the way you pointed out is that metadata on all the documents. Inconsistencies about the lack of ways in which you tag and build a taxonomy and using different tags. There's the problem where you get inconsistent data products that don't always have the information that's needed. And then knowledge management is where I tend to bring in efficiency, effectiveness. And now that we've all got this defined way of working, now we can start measuring, well, how quickly are we doing things and how effective are we, or do we still have a lot of waste in our data management processes? And then, effectiveness is it making an impact on the business from a value point of view, and transformational is when we're starting to guide the business and become almost that data-driven scenario. Okay, so this is sort of where I'd like to stop for the day, and we'll come back next week in this situation, and so I'm just trying to get rid of this. So this is basically where we were. So this is the approach that I'm saying in terms of why we should bother. We're basically saying in answering the core questions, we can provide the correct answers, and the core message here is to get almost what we refer to as tactical empathy. That was Dr. Jonathan Fowler, not just for people to say, yes, okay, I see the 0.5, but when we start answering all these questions, they're saying, that's right, that's what we've got to do. That's the action plan that we've got to drive in. And that in answering that question, we should be giving them answers here in terms of where we are at our current level, in terms of supporting their decision making, and then we get basically, and we fulfill this maturity and vision of data management. Okay, so this is what I thought was really important, that we can actually get to be able to answer these core questions, and as JG put it, we're building our capability to help them with decision making. Where are we? What have we got to do to improve that capability? So I'll just pause here. That's what I wanted to present today, and just see, are there any questions, any comments? Maybe to ask Paul, you just gone through a proposal.
Just a different, maybe a different story, part of a different story, although this is the proactive way to present your proposal and all of that, but just going back to a scenario a couple of years back with a data team, and just recalling so maybe a question out there is, is your executive office or your business completely frustrated with the data management in your business? So like we were producing reports almost on a daily basis for our clients, and the account managers, the sales team, the MD, everybody involved with those clients, just continuously every single day frustrated that we weren't performing in their minds, just not performing. We weren't
Yeah.
delivering. They were getting calls from the client. So there were problems. There were definitely problems all over the place, but nothing to measure, nothing to nail it
Right.
and say, okay, let's just stop the bus, draw the line in the sand, right? Do this, DMMA, Mrs. MD, let's do the DMMA. Let's see, walk through
Right.
this matrix that you've got, or this this framework you've got here, and to. I know you're frustrated, kind of not saying, oh, this is the promise, but I know you're frustrated,
Yeah.
but this is why. So
Yeah.
that's a real live one. I remember, geez, if I knew this back then or knew of this back then, this would have been a massive help to that scenario.
Right.
So if anybody's out there with that question, getting punched every day because the data's just bad from everybody's viewpoint, then
Right.
you've got an answer for them to say, okay, let's do this as an initiative and let's show you why. It might
I
cause
think
another
for
can
your-
of worms.
Yeah.
Like,
I
why
think
have you
for
been here
what
for
you
so
also
long?
bring- Yeah.
But yeah.
And I
So-
think what you're also now starting to bring out is there's a good potential explanation as to why you're battling so much. What lack of capability are you lacking that's causing some of the challenges that you're facing, and just forcing that one team of you that's on a reporting, which is right at the back end, just
Yeah.
forcing you to work harder and trying to get faster. That's not fixing the root cause of the challenges you're facing.
100%. So that just triggered when you were going through this here. Yeah.
Right. Okay, Nisha, yes, you have a question.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you so much. I feel a large part of the capability has also got to do with the data ownership concept and processes. Is there a chance for you to do a webinar on data ownership?
Sure. I can. Yeah, I actually did some training on it today from an operating model slash organizational constructs. So how do we take it from first of all understanding that model of being centralized, federated, because that really affects your data ownership selection. So if you federated, you could have multiple data owners. If you consolidated or central, you should have one data owner. So these all affect that type of decision making around the ownership of data within an organization.
We face another challenge on that is that we're being dictated by the technology to try and fit into the
Right.
and that's highly frustrating coming from a
Yes,
data governance point of view.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, I'll show you some of those different models where in some cases, technology wants you to have a data owner per system. And they say that person's got to take responsibility for the system. But you know that because it's split over business units and stuff like that, and just aspects of it, then it doesn't always give you a good reflection. And typically the owners of the systems tend to be IT related and not business related.
Correct. And even looking at specific technologies to help you do data governance is also where I find sometimes they force you into specific data ownership model.
Right.
So that's another
It's
angle
actually,
of the technology.
yeah. I like what you just said there, because we had a talk on reference architecture in terms of defining the business requirements for the technology before you buy the technology. And you have to have some guidance from business to understand the appropriate technology for you, and not to be driven the wrong way around. But these things happen.
Thank you.
Sure. Maybe Debbie can just make a note of that in terms of trying to bring a data ownership discussion in. Maybe we can use it on one of the DMMA user groups, and we can have a session on data ownership.
That would be awesome. Thanks.
Sure. All right. Okay. Fantastic. Any other questions? Great. Thanks, JG. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.